Torchbearers with Dr. Tim Davis.
My forgiveness and your forgiveness is for God's own use. Our forgiveness is not the end. So many times we think that way. Once a person is forgiven or once we're forgiven, well, it's the end. We've reached the pinnacle. No, forgiveness is not the end. It is just the beginning of the journey. Forgiveness is over here. And that occurs so that something else can happen. Something further can happen. Forgiveness is so that there can be a new creation. That new creation, just like the original people of God, a new nation, needs development. Here we are in Genesis. God begins to create the earth, the heavens, the cosmos. The earth was what? Empty, chaotic, and dark. And the Spirit of God is where? He's hovering. He's brooding. The Spirit of God has not yet insinuated itself into that empty, chaotic darkness. Kingdom power is released into this empty, chaotic darkness. Is that power released en masse all at once? What do we see? Why wasn't everything just done? Earth ready for habitation, animals, fish, birds, man, everything's done at one time. Could God not have done that if he chose to do it? No. What do we see there in creation? Kingdom power is released. God says, let there be light. It floods this empty, chaotic darkness, and we see that there are creation periods. We see a sequential, cascading change in the character of the earth. The first creation act is that light enters into the empty, chaotic darkness. Kingdom power is released. Day 1. Day 2, something more significant happens. Day 3, something more significant, and so on through the creation period. Have you ever wondered why 6 days of creation? Sequential, cascading, change in the character of the earth. The Spirit of God has now insinuated himself, into this fray. And what's the purpose? So that God can have a dwelling place, a place to rest, a place to live with man, so that God can have a temple. What's that got to do with the Beatitudes? What's that got to do with the Sermon on the Mount? What's that got to do with my individual salvation and your individual salvation? Remember, we are forgiven for his purpose and for his use. Man in his fallen state is exactly what we read in Genesis. The earth is empty, chaotic, and dark. Now man, fallen man, has taken the place of the empty, chaotic earth. It is man in his sinful, fallen, unredeemed state, which is exactly what the earth was. Here we have now man in the same position, and the Spirit of God has taken up the same activity as it did in Genesis. Now the Spirit of God, with that same creative power, that Spirit of God is now hovering and brooding over that life. And then forgiveness. With forgiveness, God says, in essence, let there be light. And what happens? Kingdom power is unleashed into this life, just like kingdom power was unleashed into the empty, chaotic earth. When man is redeemed, when there is forgiveness, there is humanity combined with divinity. There is a new creation. There is a person here who is unforgiven. Here is the Spirit of God. There is forgiveness. God says, let there be light. The Spirit now insinuates itself into that life, and there's a new creation. When God spoke into the empty, chaotic earth, it changed in character. It became something else. It looked differently. So we come to the Beatitudes, and I remember reading those Beatitudes, and it dawned on me, I'm seeing the days of creation from Genesis. It was an amazing epiphany for me. I'm seeing God develop a new creation the same way he developed his new earth in the beginning. Here's the Spirit insinuated itself into a fallen, chaotic life, into my life. The very first thing that happens when that occurs is God says, let there be light. And the Beatitude that starts out the whole thing is what? You have poverty of spirit, you've genuinely repented, now the kingdom of heaven is yours. And when God spoke light into the original creation, what was happening? The kingdom of heaven was theirs. The kingdom of heaven, you see, was available. The kingdom of heaven and that power was unleashed into this empty, dark, chaotic existence. and all of the changes that can occur because the kingdom of heaven power is now available and unleashed. When you're forgiven, you are not characterologically that different from anybody else, are you? The earth was not instantly created. It took time. It took a sequence. It took occurrences. It took incremental, calibrated increments of God's Spirit coming, insinuating itself into that empty, chaotic, dark earth to change it over time. Why would God do that? What was the purpose for God creating the earth? A place for Him to dwell and to rest. What's the purpose for our forgiveness? A place for Him to live and dwell. His temple. Us. Our bodies. What are the Beatitudes? They're creation. They're Genesis. They're the creation days. This should be exciting to you. This is spiritually revolutionary. 4 creative things happened to the earth so that something can happen through the earth. Something had to happen to it 4 times before something could happen through it 3 times. Look at the Beatitudes. How many happen to us before things can happen through us? Look what the Spirit does 4 times does. Something to us. Number 1, makes us poor in spirit. Kingdom power is unleashed in our life. Let there be light. Number 2, blessed are those who mourn. They will be comforted. Number 3, blessed are the meek. They will inherit the earth. Reign, rule, and have dominion. You're now characterologically changed so you can do your original mandate, reign, rule. You're going to inherit the earth. Number 4, you're blessed if you're hungry and thirsty for righteousness. You will be filled. 4 things have happened to us. 4 things have happened to our character. 4 things have set the foundation firmly in place. Like at the end of day 4 in Genesis, the foundation was firmly set in place. And then the 5th day, God says, I'm going to start to use the character changes that I did here in the first 4 days, and I'm going to use them. That's exactly what happens in the Beatitudes. Something happened to them because I insinuated my character into their life. Now something's going to happen through them. What happens through us? We start to give people mercy. God then uses that change to reach into the lives of others. The first 4 have happened to us. Then the last 3 happen through us. He now takes his new creation, forgiven man, and he develops its character in the same exact way he developed the original earth, and for the same exact reasons, so that he can dwell, so that he can rest, so that he can live there. This is spiritually revolutionary.